Welcome to the second Hardloop Endurance Podcast with Neff and Kirk Elias. It takes a long time to get fit. You cannot get fit in one or two workouts.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Give this another crack here. I was excited to see how ambitious you were for episode number 2.
I'm ready. We had
you
so
are.
many topics just come up in 1 week.
I had some good feedback. I had some athletes already listen in. I sent out to our Hardloop network of athletes and social media and already heard some really good feedback. One, they wanted a little better quality on the audio, so we're trying a new system. Hopefully that works now that we're remote. You're back home in Reno?
I am. I'm at 5,000 feet just hanging out.
Jealous.
Yeah.
I'm at 130 feet.
Your training camp awaits anytime.
Yes. When I can make the trip, we'll have a new addition joining us there. So the big news this week, obviously, was our name lives on. A new generation. William Elias was born on July 1st.
Well, that's not the full name.
William Elias Neff.
There you go.
Yeah. So
awesome. It was, getting to see Rachel just less than a week before she gave birth. I'm delighted for all three of you, but I'm especially delighted for Rachel, who was struggling a little bit at the end.
Yeah, she's doing much better.
Good.
Let's see. She gave birth on Wednesday. On the Tuesday, we had walked a total of 5 miles together, just on the street here at home. So she was doing pretty good up until that point. But I was just reminded. I had labor written down here on our notes, and you're like, "What are you talking about, labor?" That was the most amazing thing to witness, to watch William being born, to see Rachel go through. We actually talked about, what would you relate that in an event to? Was it an ultra marathon? Was it a marathon? Because it happened really fast. And she said it was basically like a marathon because she didn't have the extreme highs and lows of a 100-miler, which she's done. She has the reference point. She was definitely in a lot of pain there in the final hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of it. But so the marathon of labor, she did amazing, and everyone's doing awesome this week.
Great. Wonderful to hear.
Yeah. So that was our big news. You're home in Reno. What do you have on tap this weekend, today?
Well, actually, a little later, we're heading up to 7,700 feet and going for a hike on the Flume Trail. Going to take
cool down.
Fika the Wonder Dog with us.
Fika.
Always
my old
fun.
running buddy. How did Fika hold up for our 250th birthday? My first 4th of July as an American. I know my dog was freaking out last night. The baby was good, but the dog was not.
Yeah. Fika does not like fireworks. She was, and we tried to help her out. For the first time ever, we gave her 100 milligrams of trazodone to try to calm her down. Did not calm her down one bit. But she is sleeping off a trazodone hangover this morning. So she's a little slow.
Yeah, we gave a little bit of Benadryl, and then, it's super skittish. And then, of course, this morning, my mom was leaving for church on our street and ran over a bunch of unpopped little crackers and set the dog off again, leaving this morning. Yeah, torment for the dogs. Fika, though, the name, so I wanted to send this to you. It's kind of plays in well to our culture feed here to begin with the film and the music. But I found a really cool YouTube series that I've been watching called Fika. And I'm sure you know the definition since your dog's named Fika.
Well, yeah, it's a Swedish word which the Swedes thought I was nuts when I was going to name a dog Fika. I have some good Swedish friends. And
Could have
Fika,
named it Fartlick.
that's right, we could have been. Fika refers to a Swedish coffee break with something sweet, but it's more than that. It is about shutting out the world with 1, 2, 3, 4 people, whatever, and just spending some quality time for 20, 25, 30 minutes. The Swedes do this at work once a day, but they also do it on a weekend. They'll go out to a park, throw down a blanket, have something to drink, and have some chocolate. Chocolate's kind of, supposed to
Staple.
be something sweet, but it's almost 80% of the time in Sweden, it's chocolate.
Yeah. Well, this is our little fika, that's for sure. And yeah, speaking of naming my son, we have Elias, but when I came across this fika YouTube, and I'll put the link in the show notes, the first one I watched was Will Gadd, who's a kind of an extreme sports professional athlete for Red Bull. I knew Will when we lived up in the Calgary, Banff area. He's always doing paragliding, ice climbing, kayaking as a pro athlete. And essentially this guy that was a filmmaker for extreme sports in his previous lifetime, going around filming all these pro athletes doing cool stuff, realized that he never connected with them. And he's from Sweden, and so he's come back in this later life of building this documentary on little sit downs, little fikas with all these pro athletes that he never had the time to connect with, and really having a sit down, coffee and chocolate, and learn more about them and what they've been doing. So it's a pretty cool series.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. We both agreed on a good song. Well, not just a song, but actually a music video.
Right. Storm 2?
Storm 2. Yeah, you'd sent this to me maybe a month or two ago. It's been out a little while.
Yeah. It's fabulous. It's shot in Belgium, but it looks like it could be in jolly old England or Australia.
Yeah, the reason it really resonated with me was initially it just reminded me of being where I grew up in Melbourne, Australia, in private school. It's like all the boys in their private school blazers and the uniform. And yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, I'll put a link in the show notes. But there's a long form version, I think like 8 minutes, but the final 4 is this amazing. It had to have been a single cut. Like there's no editing involved to this choreographed scene of all boys basically looking like a choir lineup, and the way they use their bodies to move and the contrast between their uniform and when they're missing and when they appear. It's just awesome.
The choreography is stunning. It really is. It's
really unique.
It's better perhaps than the music. I enjoy the music.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Choreography is out of this world. I thought it was the best thing I'd seen since Michael Jackson's
Thriller.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah, that's saying something. I'd say the other thing you sent me that was really, really cool, and I think it was a single cut again, was, This Is America, kind of the anti-gun. What am I thinking of there?
This Is America by, Childish Gambino.
Childish Gambino, yeah.
Yeah.
That was another really cool music video. Yeah, and have you had any more of your little gatherings for film night at your place?
Well, next one's coming up, but we've selected the film, the 1981 French film, bizarre little film. Jules, a messenger boy on a moped, picks up what he thinks is a tape of music, and through events, he decides to listen to it because he can't deliver it initially. And it's not music, he's overhearing a recorded murder. And the rest of the film dives into the very strange French underground at the time, which is revolving, strangely enough, around opera. It's a quirky little film, but it's a fabulous watch. So I'm looking forward to showing it to friends, and if you're looking for something a little interesting, Diva.
Cool. Definitely check that out. On the list for sure. I've just been watching some murder mysteries, but just kind of trashy TV. I think we finished, it's called His and Hers, I believe, a little series. I think it was Netflix. And then The Dutton Ranch that comes out every Friday, just between feedings and sleep and shutting down for the night.
Yeah. There's nothing like a good binge.
Yeah. But I've also was able to read the book this week too, so I was impressed. I don't get a lot of reading time, and I've actually found a way to trickle it in here while we have little one around. So baby's first book was the Norwegian Method.
Awesome.
Yeah, which we'll dive into. I just love picking up on some new training methods and applications and things. But yeah, my own training, I've been punishing myself in the heat here. I've been running around noon every day.
I thought you were smart, Cal.
I know. Heat adapted. Other than the heat, it's actually managed it pretty well. I actually don't mind running when it's a little bit lower humidity, other than yesterday I got creamed by a 12-year-old on an e-scooter coming around the corner. Banged me up pretty good, and he got a good talking to while I was at it. Fortunately, he had a junior high track and field shirt on from the local junior high, so I gave him a pass.
You are a kind man.
I felt like an old man giving him a lecture on e-scooters and why they're being banned lately.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, here's to clear sidewalks and good running in the future.
All right, there we go. Back in business. Technical pause there. So training's going well despite having a little one around, and I'm excited. I'm actually really fired up. Rachel's really fired it up to train once she's kind of recovered from having baby, and I can feel marathon season approaching, and it's been good to have more of these chats with you. I think one of the biggest things you brought up before we get into the book again was a little alternative viewpoint on bicarb, which has been a huge nutritional topic in endurance the last year, I'd say. You want me to read that post, or explain?
Longer than that, and if you can read it up, I don't have it up, so that would be helpful.
Yeah, well, I guess precursor on the bicarb is essentially it's just baking soda, and it's had this lactic buffering effect when it's been taken. But the problem with taking baking soda is it gets really upset when it's in your stomach lining. So basically Maurten and a few of these other companies have found a way to repackage it in these little pellets that can kind of bypass your stomach and get into the intestines before it's absorbed. So that gives you a little bit less GI distress. So that's the huge component. And the trade-off of taking bicarb is that you can still have some incidents of GI distress, which will eventually slow you down. So, you take something to speed up, but then you're having all these stomach issues and you feel terrible. Most people won't handle very much, but, let's say you can handle it as your stomach, you're not having any GI issues. Nobody's really said that there's anything wrong with taking bicarb until this post, Jen St. Jean. It looks like she's a coach and actually a pretty good runner herself. I think she's run 2:0 something in the 800. Pretty good middle distance athlete in her time, and I believe she works with like a health and longevity, the Longevity Institute, and does research. And she basically was comparing bicarb to eating McDonald's French fries, just with the amount of sodium it has. And actually, bicarb has way more. I was just looking up, most of the amounts range between 2,000 and 6,000 or even 7,000 milligrams of sodium in a single serving. Now, in context, yeah, I don't recommend really any of my athletes, no matter, and this is debatable too, but no matter what their sweat tests and their sodium loss rates are, in the heat, I put an upper limit of about 800 milligrams per hour on most of my athletes. 800 an hour during a hard, hot effort marathon. And we're talking sodium bicarb has upwards, most people would be taking 4,000 to 6,000 in a single serving. There's going to be some ramifications with that. And basically that's what she's getting into here. Like you're causing so much issues with arterial pressure, and your kidneys are forced to dump all those minerals like potassium and electrolyte. She basically causes electrolyte chaos in your body. So there's natural pH issues going on. It's just like a chemical megadose. And I think there's going to be some ramifications cardiovascularly and kidneys and everything on these athletes that were not only using it for a race, but we're hearing rumblings of some of those marathoners daily dosing now.
Yeah. In Salway's brilliant run in London, setting the world record, he was using Maurten's. In fact, we keep referencing Maurten's. There are other brands, but there's been a lot of information published about Maurten's, and it's kind of helpful actually for a coach. They are embedding themselves and putting employees with the training camps. So in Salway's case, they sent somebody down to Kenya for 30 days in the lead up to London so that they could, get a perfect dose. They experimented with him on carbohydrate intake and bicarb. And they settled on like about 125 milligrams of carbohydrate per hour.
125 grams of carbs per hour. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what their dosage was of bicarb, but bicarb was supposedly only going to be valuable for folks in the middle distances, limited time span. But
yeah, and that's where a lot of my misunderstanding or confusion around the product has been is, as we talked about on the last episode, lactate has always had this bad rap for being what causes you to slow down, the heavy legs, the shuffle at the end of a 800, the mile where you're just gone fully lactic and you can't move your body anymore. But it's the byproducts that come in parallel with the fuel that is lactate. That's a good thing. Lactate's a fuel. So why would you want to, buffer more of it, especially when it is a fuel? And why would that be more important in the marathon when you're not even producing as much of it?
Well, you bring up excellent questions. I am not a biochemist, but I'm guessing that there is some suggestion that based on the performances of both Salway, Kajelka, and some other folks recently, one of the things we've seen is that the last 10K has been amazingly fast compared to previous other marathons. And people seem to be not suffering the effects long-term that they were suffering without bicarb. I have a little bit of anecdotal experience training some of my athletes when I used to coach at the collegiate level. I retired in the summer of 2025. The previous few years leading into that, when I first started reading about bicarb, I asked any of my athletes if they're aware of it, and they went, aware of it? We're using it. And I had a few athletes on my team using it before I even knew that they were aware or using it. So their description to me, like when we were doing a heavy lactate session, 16 or 20 by 400 meters as prep for a, say, a 5,000 or a 10,000, was that when they were using bicarb in the last 400s, they just could keep going. They didn't feel the burn that they would have expected to feel in the latter stages of a workout like that. And so they were using it in workouts, they were using it in races, and it, as word across the team spread, more and more of my athletes started using it.
Yeah, a totally legal thing to use. Again, it's just baking soda. But I think still a lot of misunderstanding, like as my questions raised and then as this post came up, I'd already heard that Tour de France and cycling world is such a great place for science of sport stuff. There's so much money in that sport, so much more money in that sport. I hear a lot of things come from that direction first before it hits the running world. And I'd heard that these teams that have been using bicarb essentially don't need to take much sodium the rest of the day because, they're basically overloading on 6,000 milligrams. You should be good for about 6 hours on that amount for most people, with very little extra needed. Now, the problem is that information hasn't percolated into the running world. So you still have people taking these massive sodium loads before their race and then fueling as normal, meaning they're taking 400 to 800 milligrams of sodium along with their gels and everything else, completely overdoing on the sodium. And of course, people selling the products, and I call it, it's a bit of my conspiracy theory, I call it big salt. It's like people that are making money off of selling you a really cheap product, salt, for a lot of money. Of course, they're not going to tell you not to take more of it. They want to sell more of it. And unfortunately, a lot of the studies we see are paid for by big salt, by people that sell it. So I've always taken this stuff with a huge grain of salt when I'm seeing information about products and things like that. And I've been slow on the uptake because of that. I've been skeptical.
My experience tells me that it works in terms of enabling better performances. What I don't know if is whether or not there are long-term ramifications, and hence why that post. I have
exactly.
I have a cardiologist or two in my network, and I'm actually going to send them that link and see if they'll take a peek at it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I think both of our philosophy. I can definitely speak to mine, and knowing you enough, it's like longevity and health is what we aim for. And that's exactly what this post was about. Now, I think you had reached out to an athlete and they said, well, it's worth it. Some people might say winning gold or a PR or whatever their level of achievement is worth maybe some implications down the road. Well, we'll see what they're saying, in 10, 20, 30 years. I'm still happy to be running in my almost mid 40s now, competitively. And I think it's, because I've always had that mindset in and kind of bridging into the Norwegian method, I really like the longevity of where that method is going. I think it's the healthiest way to train, one of the healthier forms to train.
I agree if you're looking simply at physical health. I think there's an underlying tension there that I have with Bakken's description of, and I'm going to look at this on another screen to make sure that I say this correctly, because I want to use his words, is that it's not variety that drives progress, it's precision.
Yeah.
And when he talks about variety, he's talking about different paces, and that really his golden window, if you will, of being 5 to 10 beats per minute below your threshold is actually the best place to be. And you don't need to spend as much time at 10K pace or 5K pace.
Right.
As an example.
And below meaning slower.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and sorry if people are just catching up. Go watch episode 1 because we're both diving into this Norwegian Method book. I've done a front to back skim. I wouldn't say I've read the entirety of it and digested it all. And I know you're really in the digestion mode right now. So I think it's going to be something we're talking about over a few episodes here.
Oh, yeah. Well, the tension I have with this is that this becomes increasing, though he says it's really important for a recreational runner. I think it goes away from some of the basic reasons why people run. I grew up, one of my mentors was my high school coach, fabulous man by the name of Rick Clayman. And he had the moniker Run for Fun. That's simple. Even though we were trying to be very competitive as a high school program, and we won 3 state championships together in cross country, he made sure that practices were truly enjoyable. And we did all sorts of weird things like, in Minnesota, there's 10,000 plus lakes. Well, we would go to a lake during August and run repeat 400s starting like in an inch deep in the water. And each 400 you had to move out until we were running waist deep and ultimately chest deep 400s in water. It was so hard. It was so much fun too.
Yeah.
It was just one of those goofy things that we did. And he had incredibly creative ways of making hard work fun and taking us to different sites. One of the things that I got ingrained and has always been part of my coaching is having a variety of places to train, different trails. We do one of the workouts that I didn't know was part of a staple in Bakken's system, like 3 times 10 minutes. Well, we were doing 3 times 3,000 meters, but we weren't doing it on a track. We were doing it around a lake, which was about 1,500 meters around. And we did another one up at 7,000 plus feet at Spooner Lake, which was 2.1, 2.2 miles around the lake. Didn't matter what the distance was. You just wanted to run 3 repeats where you gradually got faster and felt good.
Yeah, exactly.
Fabulous stuff. But we were incorporating as much variety as possible. Now, there gets a time for a track coach during the season where you got to spend a bunch of time on the track. But especially early season, I think it's so important to give people variety so they're not spending 6 months straight on a track. That's
just even from the mental standpoint, like we talked about last time on taking a break, it's just as much on the mental fatigue and the emotional fatigue of training. You just can't hold that month in and month out. It really, you look at most programs worldwide, you can't hold 4 to 6 weeks is about the most on a kind of a macro cycle, which is why you see a lot of programs implement that recharge week, whatever they call it. Every 4 to 6, even a mileage down week or intensity down week, whatever it might be. It's just no one all read the same book and came up with that. It's just through their own experience realized that their athletes needed some downtime. So it'd be a fatigue and just being in a lab pricking your finger every single run, or on a track every single run, trying to get a decimal of a millimole.
I understand why precision is absolutely critical for an elite athlete. And for those who've chosen that as a lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle choice also, they are much more willing to be on the track multiple times a week doing double AT sessions. And you don't have to do them all on the track, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You could do the longer reps away from the track, but the further you go from the track, the more difficult it is to maintain the precision. They're actually doing the blood tests frequently when they're on a track, and it's far more difficult to do that if you're out doing 6-minute repeats in a park.
Yeah. Which is kind of why you got to feel it. And a lot of the book was on feeling the effort and knowing when you're in that golden zone, he calls it, not going over. And again, the more athletes I work with, the more I see how poor the feeling is, especially now at day and age where we have these smart watches and things, telling us numbers. People don't seem to have a connection with the body as much anymore. I just had an athlete tell me, I ran with my watch covered the other day and I thought I was running this pace. And when I got home and looked at the data, they ended up being 1.5 minutes per mile off on their pace. It's like, whoa, like you look at a really good track athlete and you tell them to go and run a 62.5 on the track and they'll, without a watch, run 62.5. We've done that all the time. It's just like, you got to be able to feel the decimals of a second and learn that pace, because it makes a big difference when you get to a race and you go out too hard and you're not listening to yourself, you're following the crowd. I had a lot of good takeaways from the book so far. Again, the longevity of it really vibed. It felt like I was almost having a conversation. I thought it was really easily to digest the book with Bakken. It was, I'd ask a question almost in my head. Well, what about this? Like, what about mileage, or what about the marathon? Because this won't apply over to this sport. And it seemed like the next chapter would answer some of those questions. So again, it was a good read. I like how I felt like he had a different explanation for why we all do things like mileage. And I had written down a term, cumulative recovery, because we often hear a term like from Hansen's when we're looking at marathon training, cumulative fatigue. And I think a lot of people want to work out and a lot of people want to marathon train with the goal of being the most fatigued. Like the training is supposed to just completely wear you out. And I don't think I've ever really trained that way. And I've tried to push this on my athletes, but it's like, show up to your quality sessions ready and do them when you're actually ready, which Bakken's huge on this muscle tone and listening to that as part of listening to your body. And really the goal, I don't believe he's not against mileage, because I get the impression that he really likes a lot of volume to supplement what he's doing with this threshold work. But the goal isn't cumulative fatigue. It's like cumulative recovery between the quality sessions is kind of what I took away from that, which I wish I could just impress on the athletes I work with more.
Yeah, I think you want to be able to run well on your quality sessions. What you do in between, you need to do whatever it is that enables you to be ready for your next quality session. And for most people, that's going to be running easier than they think.
Yeah, or even just spinning the legs out and not having the impact at all. For a lot of my athletes, it's just too much impact in between, which is just going to further delay that muscle tone.
Right.
Yeah. Trying to think some of my other. Yeah, the mileage was interesting. I've kind of always had this theory. I don't think I've ever vocalized this. This is a fun little. If you're a doctoral student or maybe a future physiologist, I would love for somebody to take this on as a little study. Bakken's really big on doubles and running a lot, he's running a lot of volume, but breaking it up into very manageable pieces, whether that's the double thresholds as a workout or even just easy runs as doubles throughout the week. I've always had this idea that, and this is where it came from. I was in one of the fittest times of my life getting ready for a marathon. And I remember I was at work and I had to go up a flight of stairs in this office building. And I remember getting to the top of the first flight and just being completely out of breath and almost like lactic feeling. And same with a coworker that was with me. They don't do workouts like I was doing. But when you start a run and when you get zapped with that kind of intensity, your blood vessels, if I look at my arms right now, there's like you can barely see the blood vessels. My legs, they almost have like valleys instead of vessels. There's like no blood flowing. It's very low. Those first 10 minutes, 20 minutes of warming up, everything's dilating, everything's getting more and more efficient. And eventually you reach that plateau when you're actually warmed up where, things are flowing and the body's working properly. It's not working against you, it's working for you. I'm wondering if the amount you do that, meaning do the first 10 to 20 minutes in a day where you're going from cold to warming up, has the most benefit than let's say the first 20 minutes of a 60-minute run than the last 40 minutes. Just because it's so inefficient, there's so much like build up there, so much resistance to get over. I wonder if there's like a fitness component there of doing these doubles, even triples, where the first 20 minutes of a run is all you really need to get 90% of the way there. I think it'd just be an interesting study to see maybe limiting the amount, not even an hour. Does that make any sense where I'm going with that?
Well, I'm not sure I can wrap my head around your thoughts there, but one of the reasons why I've read that out of Bakken's book that he is encouraging doubles is that muscle tone doesn't rise until the next day. And so
Right.
even though you've done a workout in the morning, your muscle tone is still very good and ready for a second session that afternoon. Not
Yeah.
till you go through the night of sleep and recovery that your muscle tone rises and it becomes not as good an idea to try to do a good hard workout. So he puts in 2 sessions in one day. Now we say hard workout. He's working in the golden zone. He's working at slower than threshold pace.
And that's the key.
Comfortably fast. Yeah, absolutely. But you get a lot of work done by doing 2 sessions that way.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people, again, they're just going too hard on their easy days, which is what he talks about. They're going too hard on their hard days. And, I would have to work with an athlete quite a while before I'd be comfortable. One, even just, getting the doubles going of easy runs, double easy days, to make sure that they're running actually easy in the morning and the afternoon. And the progression is talked about in the book of just how to implement this kind of stuff. But it definitely takes a more advanced runner to be able to have that control, to be able to do a morning and an evening hard workout per se.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Some good stuff. I was thinking, let's say you had your group of college or high school kids and you were doing a Bakken Norwegian Method and you kept the kids together. You didn't allow the fast kids to go fast and they had to stay together. This is really going to benefit those fast kids the most because you're kind of holding them back, probably putting them into that right zone to be able to work out. I'm just thinking of my own training again here. I always feel like I've gotten more benefit out of a workout than other athletes for some reason. Like when I'm in a group setting, I've always felt like I absorbed more of the workout done the same way. And I don't know, maybe that's kind of speaking to this too. It's like maybe I wouldn't always go to the well. And there's a period where I would. But I think this type of training also benefits someone that has the patience. And that's what it's all about.
It takes a long time to get fit. You cannot get fit in 1 or 2 workouts. And I think a lot of athletes who are either new to the sport, recreational runners who pick up, running 10Ks or marathons after schooling and they're on with their life, when they see a workout that somebody sent them or that they've read about, they try to bust it. They try to run it
That's
really
true.
hard. And you got to run workouts controlled in a way that allows you to come back 2-3 days later and be recovered. If it takes you 5 to 7 days to recover from a workout, you're losing opportunities to train.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I can still feel my high school coach's umbrella tapping me on the leg on the side of the track saying, there's a debate whether you take Sundays off because you're missing 52 days a year you're not training. And here you are taking Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday off. I said, don't forget Saturday. The umbrella hits got progressively harder at that point.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Well, when I started coaching you, I had no idea you were that undertrained.
Full of potential.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there was a big track meet over the last couple of days.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going next, and I didn't even see this on your list. Well, let's take us there first. Yeah, we were in Eugene, right, for the Prefontaine Classic, and I actually was able to catch some snippets on Instagram rather than paying for FlowTrack like you're.
Well, I should have sent you something. It was actually on Peacock and NBC this weekend.
Shoot,
So,
yeah, well, we've had the soccer going too, so it's been a tough week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I devoted myself to the pre-classic on TV, so I saw quite a bit of it.
Good.
It was an interesting meet because emotionally, my first response was I just didn't live up to the hype because going into it, there was hype about world records being broken, American records being broken, people smashing through barriers, and it didn't happen. I think one of the things that was barely said during the broadcast is there was a pretty good breeze on Friday evening during the evening session, and there was another breeze Saturday. And I think it held the middle distance and distance events at a disadvantage in terms of creating those elite level performances. Now, what it did set up, however, were some great tactical races where people actually had to race each other.
And that's what I
Because
saw. There was racing happening.
Yeah, people were together with 400 to go. It wasn't down to one or two people with a long line of strung out behind them. And we had some significant upsets in both the men's and women's 800s. The favorites going in took losses. On the women's side, Keely Hutchinson from Great Britain, she's had a bit of a rough year on and off, but she's still run 154 low, second fastest time in the world this year. Finished over 156 and got beaten by Lillian Odira, a great Kenyan athlete. No question that she would have been genuine competition for Hodgkinson on a faster day. But with Abe being breezy and keeping the pack together, it changed the dynamic of the race.
Yeah.
Men's 800, same thing. Cooper Lutkenhaus going in as this
undefeated, right?
Yeah, undefeated, 6-0 on the year against world-class competition. Won 2 Diamond Leagues before this one. Now, I got to say, there were some commonalities between these races that were more than just the wind. I didn't think Lukenhaus looked that good. 400 to 600, he's normally blowing away from people someplace in that 200-meter segment of an 800. And he was just there. Everybody was sitting on him. It was clear something wasn't the same as it was other times. That's called being human, I suppose. He wasn't a machine anymore.
Well,
Um,
and Brandon Miller's move, I think it was like 200-ish to go, was unreal.
yeah, and kudos to Brandon Miller. I mean, he's having a heck of a season. Most of the hype has been around Lutkenhaus, but Miller's running fabulously well. Another thing, one of my hot takes coming out of this is that there were demonstrations of why running on the rail is not always the best tactic. And I felt never been a coach. There's a lot of coaches who coach track and field who want their athletes to run on the rail the whole time. It is the shortest distance possible. Agreed, it's the shortest distance possible. The problem is it doesn't always let you move when you want to move. And we look at some big time superstars. Grant Fisher in the 2 mile Friday night, Cole Hawker in the Bowerman Mile Saturday afternoon. And I had one other person in there. Who was it? Georgia Hunter Bell in the women's Bowerman Mile. They were staying on the rail, and in the last lap, they were getting bounced around because people were moving by them. They couldn't move out when they wanted to. Almost all of them got into situations where they're jockeying, their stride was disrupted. It really happened.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're impeded running, you don't have that flow, and then you're boxed in. You can't make a move. It's not about running the shortest distance. I'm trying to remember there was like a track study that shows it wasn't who is the fastest runner, but it's who runs the shortest. And I believe it came out of one of the world champs in Australia. But yeah, basically.
That's true if you're running in the lead. You want to run the shortest distance possible. You don't have somebody impeding your stride from the front. But if you're back 3 or 4 spots and you can't get out, now Mo Farah was a master at this. He would sit on the rail till late in the race, but almost always getting out in a long distance race at 5,000 or 10,000. He was getting out with 1,200 to go. He wasn't waiting to the last 400. And if it's a tactical race, it's a huge mistake to wait until the last 400 because people are just streaming up from the back of the pack, coming around you, and all of a sudden you're enveloped if you're on the rail. And it's a danger zone if you want to run the way you want to run. You can't do it. So I think you just need to be where you can move when it counts. That's simple. And for some people, that's going to be on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely some good races. And yeah, that hot take for sure on not running the shortest distance in this case. It would have been a good tactic to stay in a good zone, to stay strikeable for sure. It definitely hurt a lot of our top athletes that we were cheering for.
Now, one other interesting thing out of Eugene, the M11 Track Club, which includes Keely Hodgkinson and Georgia Hunter Bell, they have been just a force as a club to contend with in the Diamond League and across the European circuit this year. They come over to Eugene, they looked extremely human. Now, Hodgkinson finished second in the 800, but well off what she's been running. And Georgia Hunter Bell was, like I said, in that pack on the rail with 150 to go. She could not move, and other people moved, gapped her. And she looked like somebody who didn't know when the race began. It was very interesting. I think there's another component to this, however. They've been doing almost all their races in Europe.
That's what I was going to say. Probably that Europe travel and everything else taking its toll.
All of a sudden they're traveling 8-9 time zones. That throws a monkey wrench into it for a lot of people. And it's why I think the first race for most American athletes when they go overseas, when they go to Europe, tends to not be so good. Now, you avoid that when you get there a week to 10 days in advance. But when somebody's going over for 3 or 4 weeks, they're not as inclined to want to go over 10 days before a race to do the full adaptation, right? It's expensive for one thing, coming out of your pocket. And so those races only pay for usually the night before
Yeah.
and the night after a race. And so if you're going to go over 10 days and in front, 8 or 9 of those days are coming out of your pocket.
Yeah, this is always something I deal with for myself racing, but also a lot of my athletes that are going overseas. They do Europe or Africa races and Australia. I think, jump in big time zones. It's always like, yeah, work's not going to give them the time off that you really need to go over there and adapt. And then they talk to me about, trying to get on the sleep schedule ahead of time. But you end up just cutting your sleep, and that hurts your recovery and your final taper period. So it's a tough one traveling.
It is. Travel's
Comrades.
wild.
Yeah, Comrades was something I wanted to talk about on this episode, but it's a good segue from this because Comrades has always been one of the hardest ones for me to go and race. And the last time I did it, so Comrades being in South Africa, you pretty much have to travel to Europe first, and then you travel the entire north to south down Africa in your next flight to get down there. I've done one where I went from DC all the way to South Africa, which was a good flight as you learn more and find those better routes. But yeah, it took a good few days, 5 days to really start feeling normal again, being in South Africa. But Comrades really is what inspired the name Hardloop, which is why I wanted to bring it up. I actually had a teacher when I lived in Australia in Melbourne, Mr. Hockey. He was my grade 6 teacher, my homeroom class teacher, and he was from South Africa. He had done Comrades, and it was this race he talked about in class that really scared everybody off of running because it sounded terrible. It's a point-to-point, oldest and biggest ultramarathon in the world. This year, I believe it was well over 20,000 people, and coming up on its 100th running of the event next year, which I'm kind of in the back of my head hoping I can go do. It'll be my 4th Comrades if I do. But each year they alternate which way it goes. So on this year it started in Durban, which is on the coast, and it ran up to Pietermaritzburg. So you have a 6,400 feet of climbing, and still has about 4,000 feet of descent in the up year, they call it, from Durban. And then the following year, like next year, will be a down year. And that'll have, 6,400 feet of descent on highway over 50 to 55 miles. And the reason it varies is because that route changes a little bit each year. Construction reroutes, the start-finish venue might change. Like the first year I did it, we finished in a World Cup soccer stadium that was on the outskirts of Durban. So we actually got to Durban and then ran out of Durban to finish the final couple miles just to get to this stadium, which was worth it. But, you'll have these years where it's a really long or really short year. But Hardloop is Afrikaans for run, basically means running. Obviously, it means more to me. It's like we have Memorial Park here, which is a loop, and the track is a loop, and doing a hard loop, and it kind of blends well with a lot of training and things like that. But yeah, that's the origination of the name that it came up with for Hardloop.
One of the things I'm struck by, think about the ultras held in the United States. Most of them have a couple hundred entrants.
Yeah.
Comrades has 20,000. Now, one of the reasons is they're not on a trail. They're not on a single track at times.
Right.
They're on a highway. But still, 20,000 people showing up to an ultra. Amazing.
It's a national holiday. I mean, people tune into this thing. Non-runners, are there to cheer. You'll have 600,000 people on the sidelines.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's an experience for sure. It's definitely top of my list. I'm actually shocked, and I'm going to get into bringing up this year's race and what it was worth, but that we haven't seen people like Molly Seidel and Des Linden, especially Des Linden. I mean, this race was made for Des. I don't know why, even in her prime, didn't focus on it, because you look at this year, Gerda Stein, which is a South African marathoner Olympian, won it. I believe this is, gosh, it would have been her fifth time or something. I'd have to look up the stats, but she only missed winning it one year because she decided to focus on the Olympics. But she's an Olympic marathoner. She's done well in the 220s range as a marathoner. And then this year, really cool story. We had a kid that originally, it looks like he went to Nebraska and was a transfer to, I'm going to get an NAU, I believe, is where he finished up school in the US, but he is a South African, 2:14 marathoner, I believe. He came and won in a record uptime year, so different records for the up and down year. He just broke the record and won. I think the US equivalent was $140 something thousand for his win. So why the pros have been missing from around the world is a huge question to me. Why they wouldn't go and do something it's a little bit longer than a marathon. You know, they're running 5 hours 15 for the men, 5:30. My best is in the 5:50s. So it's definitely a bit longer and it's more demanding, but the money is there. And you see some really good track athletes, like we just had George is his name, win it this year. I believe he's run 13:30 in the 5K. He's a 3:58 miler. So like he had the speed and he actually held some speed through his training. He did some insane mileage. I was looking at some of his training weeks. I think he was up in the 140s, 160s for some of his weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of hills because of the demands of the race, specificity, again, being the king there. But yeah, really, really interesting race. Held in June every year. Africans are showing up now. We actually did have a good contingent of Americans. We had Charlie Lawrence, who's the 50-mile world record holder, the American. I think he was fifth. He was in the top 10 for sure. Didn't have quite the day. But yeah, you know, it's catching on a little bit here and there. I think we've seen, you know, who's won the race, which is kind of crazy, is Alberto Salazar has been in there back in his day. So we've seen grumblings of marathoners trickle over to that race. Super special to me personally, and for the company, obviously, of Hardloop. But definitely, if you're only ever going to do one ultra, I think that's a pretty special, a road ultra anyway, special one to go do. Cool. It's kind of it from the racing world that I had, is just covering Comrades, which is a couple of weeks old now. I thought this was interesting, talking about Western States last year, and then we're going to do an episode or content on what's on the boards. You know, last week we covered Let's Run. You were talking about how there's this coaching forum of open positions, and most of the people on there that say anything really have no idea what they're talking about. And what do you know? We get off our podcast last week, and breaking news on the hiring was Leroy Burrell, my old coach from Houston, moving from Auburn over to A&M, and he wasn't even on the list of applicants on Let's Run. So goes to show you.
Yes, it does.
The one I pulled off of Let's Run this week was, let's just throw 30 random Kenyan dudes into Western States. Like, if we allow, it's kind of like what we were talking about. Like, we're not seeing the cream of the crop here because we're not letting enough people into Western States. What would 30 Kenyan dudes do on the trail? And you know, there's some debate there. We'd really have to just do it as a test to see what would happen. I don't think they would do as well as we'd think. And because we've seen some people try ultras. You know, Seidel had a really tough time at Western States. I think she learned a lot. I personally paced what did he run? 2:10 marathoner, Reed Coolsat from Canada. Now, he wasn't in 2:10 shape at the time, but I watched him kind of struggle with Western States. And then we saw Rory Linkletter try a trail race last week too with a broken arrow. Rory's the Canadian record holder for the marathon now, beating Cam Levins out. I think he ran, 2:05 at Boston. Struggled to not get chicked at this trail race on the mountain race. and he's in form right now. So
Yeah. No, it's clear that there's different skills involved.
oh yeah.
And the ultra world is still very limited, though, in the numbers of participants. And I mean, if nothing else, because usually only several hundred people are allowed on a trail race. And that's where a lot of the big ultras take place. So when you get a sport that has tens of thousands of participants, you can have more talent. That's simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they'll follow the money too. So as we see more money continue to trickle into the sport, I'm sure we'll see more of these opportunities for people that might be kind of mid-level pros in the track or even the road world kind of move in that direction as they see the benefits to making a lifestyle out of it. Do you have anything catch your eye on the boards this week or anything else?
No, I'll stay away from the Let's Run boards for a moment, and let's see if we've got anything else. A
Well,
fun
I
one.
was thinking it was busy for sports because yeah, we talked about the pre and then the World Cup, which Canada lost 0-3 yesterday, which was sad to see.
Sorry about that.
But my mom's super into the tennis, so we've had Wimbledon on in between the games. And I thought you would love this one. I pulled it out because she came in. She's like, you wouldn't believe what this Eva Swiatek's coach said. So Eva's the returning champ to Wimbledon, and she had a little incident where she threw her racket during one of the games. She kept kind of coming back and losing, but her coach yelled from the sidelines for everybody to hear, "She's not winning, you're losing."
Ouch.
Yeah, that hit some headlines of just the coach publicly kind of shaming her. But he was kind of what he was saying was like, "Yeah, you're losing it mentally on the court." I was wondering if you've ever had any bursts of rage on your athletes or any sayings that maybe good sayings that you can think of.
Oh, across 50 years? Yes. I remember there was one young man who you're aware of. I'm not going to name him.
No names here.
No names. But when we were in our Little Rock days at a conference championship, he had a problem of being perhaps a little too chill and taking everything for granted and having fun. And we noticed that in big races, he was not as maybe focused. And I went completely out on a limb and something that is, you know, in these days of safe sport, I'd probably get written up for. Um, but I walked up to him about a minute before the race. He was on the starting line. And I said his name and he looked at me and I slapped him across the face. And I, go have a great race. And he looked at me like, what the heck? And I walked away and his adrenaline level spiked and he ran a much better high level race than he ever had before. So it it didn't backfire, but it was a rare time. I've never done it in 50 plus years. That's the only time I've ever done something like that. But it happened to work in that case.
Intuition, baby.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. You could have kissed him. It probably would have had the same effect, you know.
Yeah, it might have actually. Yes.
But neither of those things will go down in today's world.
Well, and back when that occurred, it wouldn't have gone down.
Oh, my high school coach, I was referencing earlier, yeah, the umbrella on the leg, that wasn't the only abuse we would take. So I'm definitely akin to physical motivation.
Well, I try not to do that. Usually before a big meet, I'm telling athletes, I'm referencing back to whatever we're trying to get them to do tactically. And then I'm telling them, go have fun. If you having fun, ironically, for most people means they're going to perform better because they're a bit more relaxed. It's when the tension rises and rises. And that's not a lot of fun when you're kind of out of your mind with the anticipation and
Anxiety.
anxiety. Absolutely. So,
You know what? Some athletes really do need a physical reminder to enact a mental response. And I'm not saying you need to hit somebody, but I'm just remembering early in my coaching years, I had a high school team, and my best athlete was very anxious to the point of vomiting every pre-race. You know, on the start line, we would have to shield him from the other runners on the cross country line to let him puke and get it out. And I had to turn that, because we knew it was going to happen, into a positive. It's like, one, like, hey, rid your stomach of everything. You're going to feel nice and light afterwards. And then the physical thing I'm thinking here is I actually gave him my hat right before the start one time. So rather than hit him, I just took off my hat and I put it on him backwards. I said, like, you're this, no names, yeah, you're the cool kid. Like, this is who you are. And it was like, you could tell he went and had fun, right? Because he had this new mask that he put on of, a different character persona that he had with this cool hat on backwards that coach had given him. And, I could see that kind of released something, just kind of like a slap in the face.
yep, great stuff.
Yeah, the mental side. We got to see, speaking of last week's podcast, we talked about going to Jim Bevan's retirement party. We got to run into, I don't know if you got to talk to her, Lenny Waite, British Rice graduate, steeplechaser for the Olympics, sports psychologist as well, practicing. Really, really enjoyed. I actually brought her to speak specifically to that kid, but also the team one year when I was coaching. And she would bridge those gaps of physical, mental things. So like, I don't have it here, but like just putting a pencil in your mouth and holding it in your teeth activates all these smiling muscles. Well, that actually releases all of the kind of smiling, happy drugs that would be associated to being happy and smiling. So you can kind of reverse engineer physical, mental, physical with things like that. So I just clearly remember her talk on that specifically.
Very good. And yeah, I talked to Lenny briefly, but it was a big affair at Bevan's retirement. We referred to it last week, but we never said anything about Jim. I mean, Jim Bevan is a fabulous coach. He's even a better human being. And that was clear that evening with all the love in the room and the comments that people made. I mean, he's just an awesome person, a great friend, and a fabulous coach.
That's for sure. The amount of success in that room that he's generated, the amount of lives he's impacted, was impressive.
That it was.
Awesome. Well, it's good to have a nice fika with you here, Coach, again. We need to have some chocolate. I've just been having my ginger beer, if anyone's wondering what I'm drinking in this koozie. It's not alcoholic. It's just a ginger.
Excellent stuff. And I was drinking some iced tea, but I was missing my chocolate.
That's for sure. What's on tap for you coming up? You're going to head up to the mountains now, get some altitude?
That's the plan.
Well, I'm going to try to double. I'm going to try to keep building this momentum I got going, and otherwise hang out with little one.
Sounds great. Give my best to William and to Rachel and the rest of your children also.
All of them, yeah. Say hi to Bean. And if anyone has more topics for us to cover, a deep dive into something, questions they have on training specifically and coaching and things, hit us up on social on the Hardloop or Hardloop Run. Instagram is probably the best place. I know we've both been sharing there, or reach out individually is totally fine as well. Happy to deep dive more as people come up with things for us.
Yeah, that'll be great. We'd love to handle questions.
All right. Good to see you, Coach. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Next week or the week after, we'll do it again.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye-bye.